Hello my dear viewers, welcome to another episode. In 1913, the American architect Frank Lloyd Wright sent a letter to his friend Darwin Martin telling him to celebrate him for he would be designing the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo. Japan built that hotel because it started getting foreigners and many Western diplomats started visiting. After 2 years of struggling, Wright managed to take on the project, and he made a beautiful design, and as usual architects design expensive things and the client wants to spend less. That's when there was disagreement on the hotel's design, but Mr. Wright designated on his design, not the same word, read again. He fought until they made him execute it the way he wanted, and after 10 years of work, the building was finally done. It became the monument that confirms Japan's strong relations with the West. On the day of the opening, Wright was in America, so he couldn't attend the opening in Japan. This was on the 1st of September 1923, on that day, in a legendary scene of a fictional epic, an earthquake hit Tokyo with magnitude of 7.9 Richter. The whole country was shaking. That earthquake killed 143,000 humans. And made 1.5 million homeless. Tokyo's buildings fell like domino one after the other. I want you to imagine someone like Frank Wright in his office in LA in the US who had been working on the building for 10 years and on the day of its opening, a 7.9 Richter earthquake hit. Kill us already, couldn't the tectonic plates keep it together and stay still until the opening is over? That's when Wright in his office in LA received a short telegraph saying that the hotel he had built was steady in its place as a statue for his brilliance. Really? Wright couldn't believe it, my friend, as if an angry Greek god wreaked havoc on the town just for the opening of his building. Mr. Wright was right. He forwarded that letter to the American press. He felt victorious because, as we said, there were lots of feud on the design, and his defense during that feud was that the design counted for scenarios like earthquakes. The Japanese had lots of problems, of course. Besides the buildings having fell or not, one of the biggest problems of that earthquake was the fires. What, abo mead? Fires. Earthquakes don't just shake the ground then buildings fall and that's it, earthquakes affect everything. It's possible that direct deaths could be less than other problems, like the injured that can be saved who are trapped under the debris waiting for help. A help that probably can't reach them because the ground's motion broke underground pipes, or a store's exterior sign fell on the ground and made a spark, and the spark made a fire, which spiraled into a separate problem than the quake. After all that and saving people's lives, you'd find that the amount of economic loss can hinder the country from bouncing back. Bear in mind that the country spends money on saving people, curing them, and providing shelters for the survivors. Imaging a city like Tokyo with 1.5 million homeless people, and each one of them had one or more dead family members and had his family torn apart to the extent that the entire society changed. Imagine the number of destroyed streets and infrastructure that needs reconstruction. My friend, when a water pipe is installed we destroy the street and have it redone. Imagine cellular services, water pipes, electricity, and gas pipes. Tokyo's earthquakes costed Japan's economy $15 billion. The next problem after finances is investors. I won't build a compound or buildings and earthquakes hit and destroy them. So naturally, the investment market got worse, and after the generation that witnessed the earthquakes dies, a new generation will come wondering why there's no money or investments there, and it would be hard to convince them it was for a quake. Since then and Japan had learnt the lesson. There are disasters that are dead serious. Earthquakes this huge can't be learnt from twice. There's no redeem in the final exam. One time could completely wipe out a city, and take your country years back in time. I want to tell you that despite all these tragedies, Mr. Wright ignored all that and focused on one thing, that, sorry fellas. But how didn't the earthquake take down my building? The earthquake's concept is simple. This is the earth. My friend meet earth. Earth meet my friend. Earth is like an egg, consisting of layers within one another, shell, whites, and yolks. Thank you Earth, bye. Yes, I hit a strike. We live on the shell that's broken, and these broken pieces that form the shell in our Earth are called tectonic plates, and they're not directly next to each other. Their edges rest on top of each other, and they want to move all the time but their friction keeps them from moving. This tension is called stored energy, until one time they slide resulting in immense movement. That's the earthquake, abo mead? Wait, man, if it was I would tell you. This movement happens at the boundary between the two tectonic plates. Tectonic. This mess is what creates quakes. A tectonic plate and another one on top of each other. Since they're usually on top of one another, the hypocenter is way below underground, and from that center, the stored energy is released. The entire time these plates were pressuring on each other, that's the earthquake. It keeps holding pressure, until it couldn't help it. This energy creates two types of waves on the Earth's surface, Rayleigh and Love waves. The Love wave was named after Augustus Love. Anyway, when an earthquake happens, the buildings should withstand the waves, which are different waves than what the building normally endures. The building normally withstands itself and the people inside it, appliances, people, rain or snow, something that are usually weighted and press on the building downwards, but the earthquake waves move the building horizontally. The ground moves from beneath, so you keep moving right and left. The waves push or squeeze it. This horizontal movement is what pushes you as you get off the bus when it didn't stop and you want to get off, or when the subway stops in each station. If you are capable of carrying your weight standing or walking, you'll fall with any horizontal push. The bus's movement pushes you in a horizontal direction and suddenly you're too weak to carry yourself and fall down. That's why when the news of Wright's hotel standing still made it to him, he sent a letter to Louis Sullivan, his previous tutor, who invented the modern skyscraper and considered this architecture to represent American culture. Wright sent to his tutor telling him, "I was right. I knew better that buildings should be short and horizontal, and the idea of skyscrapers of yours is a dumb idea. And you didn't teach well, by the way." I don't need to tell you that Wright and Sullivan had a tense relationship, because Wright worked under Sullivan, and when Sullivan found out that Wright was doing side business using the company's devices without his knowledge, he fired him. But Wright was too happy with the quake, and felt like he dethroned Sullivan. Thank God for the quake. Japanese people were receiving condolences and he's messing with his tutor. Wright died satisfied with his work without anyone telling him he was wrong. He was wrong, Abo Mead? Wait, my friend, he who laughs last, laughs best. Wright lived and died without fully understanding the situation, and that tall buildings could be more fortunate than short ones. The earthquake's effect on buildings is hard and complex. That's why places with high risk of earthquaking are always watching for any quakes around the world, to study it and understand. The problem of these places is that they're always waiting, like you waiting for your friend to knock on the door, but he never shows up. 5 minutes and I'll be there, I'm right around the corner. I'm almost there, I'm parking. So you know there's a possible and close hit but don't know when. All what these countries can do is to be prepared, and be ready waiting for the quake. That's the situation in places like Japan and Turkey, or the entire west coast of North and South America. The US and Mexico are always in anticipation of a quake, the apocalypse, the big one, that'll destroy everything. There's contact between the capital Mexico City in the east and the west coast cities, and they check up on each other every while like families do. All good? Buildings are steady? Yes sir, everything is put. People are trained to escape? Better than any thief, sir. Indeed, on the 8th of September 1985, the earthquake they were waiting for had hit at Mexico's west coast by the ocean with magnitude of 8.1 Richter. Stronger than Tokyo's that we talked about earlier. But take this, it passed safely. The damage in the buildings was salvageable. People were caught in the chaos and helping each other. The police checking out the injured and the hospitals ready to take them in. But despite all of this, it was a great victory. But it was missing one thing: anyone in Mexico City to congratulate them for the quake passing safely and how proud they were, and that they were glad they were okay. Why didn't they call, anyway? Probably playing cool, Abo Mead. My friend, let me tell you that the government was excused, because Mexico City's government succeeded in saving the west coast from the quake, but Mexico City's buildings were the ones falling down. Friendly fire. You're baffled, of course. What just happened? Can you imagine this? Set aside the irony for now, and focus on the engineering part. We're saying that a quake hit the west, and the buildings in the east fell. Under the influence of the quake of the west. It's like having a quake in Alexandria and the buildings of Asiut fall down. What did I do? That's approximately the same distance between the hypocenter and Mexico City. The quake waves didn't destroy everything in its way. It left the buildings in its way still until the waves made it to Mexico City, and when they did, they showed their effect. What did I do? Oh my God, Abo Mead. Wait my friend, I'm not done. Listen to how specific the quake was. I won't just take down the buildings far away from the hypocenter. I'll only take down the buildings ranging from 6 to 20 stories, that's my mood. Higher or lower than this, I won't take it down. And breakfast first. It seems like Wright's hotel, the guy rubbing it in his tutor's face, if his hotel was in Mexico City, it would have fell down. It's a tough one, and Wright died before understanding it, but you are still alive, and the entire world learned from Mexico City's earthquake. Any body in the world has a natural frequency, which is the frequency the body will move with if you pushed it. If that push was repeated and not just one, and this repetition happened in a frequency close to the body's normal frequency, then something happens called resonance, and the effect of the force of that push will greatly double. If you, my friend, want to jiggle a plate of jello in the same way we see in the ads, it's not always the more you shake the more it wiggles. There's a specific speed of shaking that can make you reach that strong wiggle. Wiggling jello isn't a tough job, it's a delicate one. Your hand shaking at that moment was close to the jello's natural frequency. Wow, even the jello had frequency, abo mead. The soil where the building stood on also has a natural frequency like the jello, and the buildings, also like jello, have natural frequencies. These frequencies were different according to the building's mass and rigidity. Was that building's rigidness like jello or like pudding? Whether jello, pudding, the building, each has a different frequency, and in turn different wiggle. After that we look at height. Is the building high or low? When the high building shakes, it needs time to take the wave in and pass it on. If the quake's frequency is faster, there won't be resonance, while the short building needs very fast waves to get resonance, and if the quake was slower, no resonance would happen. Now, what happened in Mexico, my friend? What happened was that by the time the waves made it to Mexico City, they were weak, but their frequency was close to the ground's natural frequency, and when the waves caught on the same frequency as the ground, it became strong. Earth waves doubled and became so strong on Earth's surface. The ground beneath the buildings was shaking in great frequency, and that frequency was close to the normal frequency of the buildings from 6 to 20 stories, so they fell down. The rest of them under 6 or more than 20 were safe and sound. You have here waves with specific frequency, found a ground with similar normal frequency, and they clicked, so they both found buildings with specific frequency and took them down. They all kept shaking. Pass by, sir, go, come on, you took it too far. Shake it, shake, boy, come on. Walk away. Mexico's quake wasn't a normal one. It shook the world of structural engineering. Structural engineers noticed that earthquakes can happen anywhere, and the ground the building stands on has an essential role. Your distance from the plate boundary isn't relevant to your work as an engineer. You can't depend on how far you are and the rarity of quakes, or that your building's math is perfect. You have to keep in mind the relation between your building and the ground it stands on. Usually quakes' frequency meet up with medium schools indifferent, and mostly these are the buildings affected the most. Opposite to what Wright says, the long skyscrapers usually and underlying usually withstand earthquakes well. Frank Wright was an architect, not a structural engineer, and his incident is too old. In 1923, that's around 100 years ago. He did his job well with respect to his time, and when Wright wrote to Sullivan, he didn't just talk about height, he also talked about another very important thing. Let me save you the suspense. Instead of preluding with that, the Japanese learnt their lesson after Tokyo's incident. And they are actually in quakes day and night, so they took their precautions and made sturdy buildings standing still on the ground like mountains, and nothing can move them, and they're no longer afraid of earthquakes. Then I would reassure you and tell you they didn't get quakes of same intensity, and all quakes hitting after Tokyo was around only 6 Richter, at least until 2003. Of course, my friend, 6 Richter for us is a huge number, and for the world too. 6 is huge, but in Japan they already saw the worse. Then after I reassure you, my friend, I would surprise you and tell you that the city Kobe was hit by a small quake that they're used to, and they acted like it was the same as others, but it wasn't, and it took the city to the ground. This small cute quake took down 200,000 buildings, and made 300,000 people homeless. It costed Japan's economy over $300 billion. That equates to a whole country's economy. You would ask me, how did this happen, Abo Mead? Tell me, what happened? I'll tell you right away, my friend. Kobe's quake was 6.9 Richter in magnitude, and it occurred in 1995. Nothing interesting yet. There's something to note here though, that Kobe City wasn't classified as an earthquake area, and that was something recurrent that happened in many cities. This problem stands in the way of structural engineers, where they are used to think in a logical sequence. How many buildings? You got it. How many stories? On it. How many people will live in it? Will do. Tell me how's the ground, wind, and rain calculate, drill, construct, build, and open. Thank you. Next. But in case of earthquakes, it's required of structural engineers to design buildings that resist an unknown force. Abo Mead, it's easy. Have this engineer design the strongest building that can be made, and the earthquake won't take it down. What are you saying? Remember when I said you're impatient? Take a step back with it. Thank you for this creative idea that no one thought of before, but let me tell you, it's not possible. Look at the Hanshin Expressway after Kobe's earthquake, and look at the sizes of the columns and the distance between them, and tell me, from your view as Muhammad in El Marg, what's more strong than this? What is there stronger than this for the structural engineer to make? There is, actually. The structural engineer read the other part of Wright's letter. That's why the people who saw the beginning of the episode and quit the earthquake probably. Anyway, what saved the hotel was the principle of flexibility, flexible foundations, flexible connections, flexible piping and wiring systems, and flexible slabs. My friend, the structural engineer shouldn't build a too stiff building. Wright knew this because he understood how wind affects buildings. ABO Mead, how's wind related to quakes? I'll tell you. Wind pushes the building in a horizontal way, like earthquakes, so the solution that Wright guessed was for the building to be flexible, like spandex or something. One would tell me, alright ABO Mead, I got you, I got it. I won't make my building too stiff, and I'll make it very flexible. Let me tell you that I knew you would say this because you're impatient, and I'll tell you there's also a problem with flexibility. The problem with flexibility isn't in the bending, but with the repetition of the bending. Wright was also wrong in that point. He was a mastermind in many things honestly, but the earthquake thing not so much. It was his field until 1923, but after that game over. Wright was smart to tell us that the wind's force is similar to the force of earthquakes, horizontal. But he wasn't completely right. Let me tell you if you don't know, there's a huge difference between wind and quakes, technically. The difference is that as if one of them pushes your chest while the other pulls the rug from beneath your feet. Both are horizontal forces, but the resistance of the one pushing your chest is by pinning your body to the ground more. The problem is in the strength of his hands, while the one who pulls the rug, that's a whole different story. The problem is the ground itself. So yes, both forces are horizontal, that's the only similarity, but resisting both is different. The nutshell that structural engineers reached was that instead of avoiding the building's destruction, they do it themselves. Structural engineers decided that instead of making the building stiff or flexible to make it, and hear this out, make it with plasticity. Get a spoon and bend it. It won't go back to how it was, and will keep its bended form. The spoon is ruined. Don't try this at your kitchen, my friend. I'm not responsible for what would happen to you or me. The spoon is indeed ruined, but it didn't break. The spoon isn't designed to endure the force of man bending it. It does its job, holding rice or soup. That's what it can do, its purpose. We want the building to be like a spoon. We want it in a way where if it was hit by a force, it won't break. Anyway, for us as structural engineering, it was important to save people's lives. So yes, the building would bend and look awful. It's okay. I just don't want the building to collapse on the people. I want them to have the time to leave and escape. The problem is something like concrete isn't a material of plasticity. It does carry heavy weights, but if you hit it from the side, it'll break. What do we do then? ABO Mead. How can we add plasticity to the building? The reinforcing steel bars, the rebars we put in concrete have plasticity, and the structural engineers found that there are simple things in the steel making that make a difference in the building's plasticity, like the type of steel, the distance between rebars. And stirrups. What? ABO Mead. Stirrups. You mean stirrups? Stirrups. The concrete column has the rebars vertically installed, so the structural engineer ties these rebars together with a small iron stirrup. This piece is small to the point where if someone wants to limit the steel's budget, they say, cut down the stirrups. Go to your engineer friends and tell them about the stirrups, they'll be impressed, and tell them that during their study, they don't put it in calculations. 5 Phi 10, and 7 Phi 12. Now listen, you and your friends, the stirrups are extremely important. Don't cut them off the budget, calculate them, because these small details greatly increase the building's plasticity. Even if the building was affected by immense force, it won't collapse. It can get ruined, a part falls of, or get bended to a side, but it would stand still, giving the people a chance to escape. Isn't the earthquake hitting with force? And wants a fight? Don't fight with it then, play it soft, give him a stirrup. Anything to channel its force in. When the earthquake ends and we save as much people, we would then see how can we fix these ruined buildings. If something is salvageable, great. If something isn't, that's okay. That became the standard method in designing codes for earthquakes. Great everyone. Bravo structural engineers. I'm going home. Play the credits now. One would ask me, sorry ABO Mead, you made a long full episode on Japan. Wasn't there a huge wrecking event that we need to talk about and explain? The destructive earthquake in Syria and Turkey. First time to be not impatient. I had it in mind to talk about it, but was waiting for you to ask. My dear viewer, the stiffness and flexibility story isn't over yet. The normal construction method that most buildings are built with is called skeleton structure system, and depends on the structural engineer designing a skeleton, columns, roofs, floors, and stuff. That's the building, thanks. Then you add walls and windows, you're free. You can have 2 apartments on the floor and conjoin them, or don't. A room split in half and build a dressing room. Extend water pipes to the balcony and have a bathroom in fresh air. Do whatever you want. That's the architect's work in coordination with the client. The structural engineer doesn't work on these details, but they're capable of taking down the building or save it. The Moroccan bath in the balcony can take down the building, abo mead? These things affect the rigidity of the building. If you tried to bend an empty plastic can, it would be easier than if it was full, no matter what it's full of, although it's the same can. Same material, structure and everything. The difference here is how you used it, this plastic can. The reports that Turkey released so far say that there were a lot of buildings that fell due to something called a soft story. A soft story means a flexible story. How does it happen, my friend? When you have a regular building, and the ground floor is left as a parking lot, so you leave the parking lot without walls for the cars to move around, or if you made the ground floor a store, you also won't divide the store into rooms, it's one piece. Here, your ground floor is columns only. There are no walls to help in keeping it together, while the stories above have many walls, so adding walls made the stories above more durable than the ones below. That's when the earthquake hits, and bam, the building breaks at its base and all of it collapses. The places of the windows also make a difference. The window, abo mead? Yes, the window. Every small detail in the building affects its rigidity and flexibility. That's why you'll find many pictures like that, a group of buildings like one another, as if it's a compound designed and executed by the same company. They all have the same structural system, but some buildings fell and others didn't. The secret is in details, my friend. Not just that, there are many other reasons. There are initial studies made that found that the frequency of the buildings is different than the frequency that the Turkish construction code set, the standards you're supposed to build accordingly, to construct buildings with specific frequencies, away from the frequencies of the earthquakes, to avoid what happened in Mexico City. This could be resulted from a bad structural design, or bad execution, or a soil problem. It could be many things. These reasons may be clearer with the progress of research and studies, because we don't know much yet. We hope that in a few months things get clearer and explainable, and understand what happened in Syria and Turkey that led to this horrid event. Because it's still too early now to understand what happened. With every new earthquake this world witnesses, we learn something new. The problem with quakes is that its effects are unpredictable, because they don't just take down buildings, they create a chain reaction of events that depend on each other. An earthquake can kill people from its fires like San Francisco's in 1960, or Tokyo's in 1923. Another earthquake can happen in the ocean, creating a tsunami waves like Japan 2011. And this one had nothing to do with soils or buildings or anything. My dear viewer, look at the map. The quake happened in the nowhere, but it created gigantic waves in the ocean that attacked coastal cities, and many cities away from the ocean fell because of the water waves. People drowned and they don't even see the ocean normally. Structural designing to face earthquakes is extremely hard, because earthquakes are unpredictable. We don't know when, where, or how strong it will hit. Also, the factors affecting the building are a lot and aren't just from outside the building but also the inside. Imagine that the window in your room can risk your home to fall in the quake. Just the window. I want to tell you that Iran and Iraq earthquake in 2017, the new buildings fell while the old ones didn't. The earthquake in northern Italy in 2012, the old buildings fell while the new ones didn't, and the area wasn't classified as an earthquake zone. Gigi, earthquake in Taiwan 1999. The area also wasn't classified as earthquake zone. Sichuan earthquake in China 2008 continued to release aftershocks up to 6 Richter for months after the earthquake. When it comes to Syria and Turkey, there was 2 quakes with a 9-hour break. The first was 7.8 Richter, and the second was 7.5 Richter. 2 earthquakes with a 9-hour time difference. We wanted that if a quake hits a building, the building is affected but not collapsed, to give the people a chance to escape. The issue here is that there was 2 consecutive quakes. No building would be able to endure 2 quakes this strong consecutively. Frank Lloyd Wright was ambitious and wanted his building to endure quakes, but it was pure luck with him. Thank God he didn't know and died happily. In that period of his life, Wright was interested in adopting new and developed structural systems, and indeed he thought of many things, I won't deny his efforts, like the existence of a swimming pool. Wright thought that many of Tokyo's buildings are wooden, and if a quake hits, there would be great fires, so he insisted to build a swimming pool to act as a water tank, in case of a quake that led to fires. So it wasn't for us, Abo Mead? That's what made things go smoothly for him. The nice thing wasn't that there was a quake and Wright's hotel stood still, but that he also died before knowing that his building didn't last that long. Actually, the building had parts collapse, and almost 20% of rebarred concrete buildings stood still that resisted the quake better than his building. And who knows, if his hotel was in Turkey or Mexico, would it stand still or not? Wright's hotel continued its endurance journey and survived World War II, but in 1967, the government decided to demolish it, because they needed a bigger building, and ironically, what's left of the building is the entrance and the swimming pool. That Wright fought to have it built. That's it, my friend. Keep up watching the old episodes and the new ones, look at the sources, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. My dear viewer, this reminds me of a cheesy pickup line where the guy tells her, "Was that an earthquake, or you fell from heaven?" Imagine. When his girl falls from heaven, an earthquake hits. Abo Mead, how will she fall and create an earthquake? The frequencies, my friend, she was frequently hesitant with him, which matched the ground's frequency, bam, an earthquake.